This is the moment in the garden I wait for all year. The flavor of a just picked tomato is nothing like what you can find in the stores. But when you've got too many, you need a plan. I'm Mari, a chef and gardener in New York, and today I'm going to show you 10 different ways to use up a harvest like this. Some will be quick and fresh, some get cooked, and some we're going to preserve for the winter. The cherry tomatoes are ripening too fast, and our first project for today is to dehydrate them. First, we're going to cut the cherry tomatoes in half. Arrange them cut side up on the trays. Add a little bit of salt. I am using a dehydrator for this, but you can also do the same method in the oven. You would lay them on sheet trays with the tomatoes facing up. Also add some salt and dehydrate them at the lowest setting of your oven until they look nice and dried. Here, I'm going to dehydrate them at 135 for about 12 hours. We're going to keep with the preserving projects because I have some tomatoes that are really ripe and they have to be used right away. So we're going to make a very simple sauce for canning. I'm taking my red plum tomatoes and cutting them in half. I'm going to roast them first to concentrate a little bit of the flavor. Then I'm going to pass them through a food mill to remove the seeds and the skins. But for this first part, I'm just laying them also cut side up on the sheet tray, adding some salt. And I'm roasting them at 400 for about 45 minutes. I don't have enough tomatoes to make a really big canning project, but I do like to have them preserved this way for the winter, so I don't mind doing just a few jars at the time when I have them available and try to do the canning while I'm doing other projects. After they're roasted, I'm going to pass them through a food mill to remove the seeds and the skins, and I'm going to save the skins after I finish this and dehydrate it too together with the cherry tomatoes. And this liquid here is more like a tomato juice, I guess. I like to keep it simple so we have more options to use it through the winter, but since we roasted them first, the flavors are a lot more concentrated. We're going to follow the standard canning procedure and add lemon juice or citric acid to our jars. I'm using bottled lemon juice today. The amount of it will change depending on the size of your jars. I'll link a resource in the description box below that you can use as a guideline if you're not familiar with canning. Then I'm going to carefully add our tomato sauce to fill the jars. Wipe the rims and place the lid. When we add the beans, I like to add it to just finger tight. And I'm going to process this for about 35 minutes because I'm using half-pint jars today. Now we're going to make a very delicious peach salsa. This one is not for canning, it's for eating fresh and it's so delicious. I love eating this as a topper for grilled meat, for tacos, or just enjoying with some tortilla chips. I'm going to dice a whole red onion. I have a big one in here, but you can use a medium one if you are not a big fan of onions. And I'm going to use some of the Heirloom garden tomatoes. I'm using one of my favorite ones here, the Cherokee Purple. It's really delicious and smoky, and it's really good for fresh eating and salsa. Then we're going to cut the peaches about the same size that we cut the tomatoes and the onions. I'm also adding a little pepper to this. This is a Brazilian pepper called pimenta de cheiro, which is a kind of a habanero that has a lot of flavor but not a lot of heat. If I want to make this spicy, I'll definitely add a habanero pepper that is very good too. Or if you want to make it a little milder, you can use a jalapeno. And I'm going to chop a handful of cilantro, add to the bowl, squeeze some lime juice in there. I'm using a whole lime here to make it very nice and tangy. A little bit of salt, a little bit of olive oil, and then we mix it all together to combine the flavors. And here we have it. Really delicious homemade salsa that'll last us a couple days in the fridge. Another favorite way for me to eat these tomatoes fresh is to make the most delicious tomato sandwich. The kind of tomato you add to this really changes the flavor of your sandwich. And I'm using a Cherokee Purple on this too, since it is my favorite tomato and I have a few of them ripened right now. And the two most important steps here to make a delicious tomato sandwich is to salt your tomatoes and to toast the bread. So first we're going to salt the tomatoes for about 5 to 10 minutes before we assemble the sandwich. It's going to help drawing out the moisture of the tomato and concentrating the flavors even more. We're toasting the bread for about 5 minutes too, so the timing is perfect. I like to use sourdough for this. I think adds an incredible texture and flavor to the sandwich. And I'm adding mayo to one side of the bread and olive oil to the other. When I'm using Cherokee Purple tomatoes, I also love to add bacon to my tomato sandwich. The smokiness of the tomatoes goes so good with the deliciousness and smokiness of the bacon too, but that's optional. In my opinion, this tastes so much better with sourdough bread than with regular white bread. It's just so good, the crunch, the extra flavor, the texture, delicious. For our next recipe, we're also going to use some bread. This is a great recipe to use if you have some stale bread around. It's called the Panzanella Salad. The bread soaks up all of the juices of our delicious homegrown heirloom tomatoes or farmers market tomatoes if you don't have a garden yet. For that, we're just going to dice our tomatoes in chunks. It doesn't need to be small. I think it looks nicer if they're a little bigger to showcase all of their different textures and colors. So I'm going to make a very quick vinaigrette here, using the same 3-to-1 ratio that I have used in the past few videos. So I'm just going to grate a garlic, add 1 tablespoon of red wine vinegar and 3 tablespoons of olive oil, a little bit of salt to season, a little bit of pepper, and we're going to shake the jar to emulsify it, and that's done. Super easy, quick vinaigrette for our Panzanella salad. And I toasted this bread here a little bit lightly. If you add some olive oil and toast them a little farther, like to golden brown, more like croutons, this salad tastes even more delicious. We're going to garnish this with some fresh basil. You can put some other fresh herbs that you have in your garden too, and it makes it for a really quick and good, fulfilling lunch. We're doing another preserving project right now. We're making a tomato jam for canning too. This one is a bit quicker. It's more like a jam, so it only takes 10 minutes to process, so it's going to be a little faster, but it does take a long time cooking because we want to reduce all of the water and make that very nice and jammy texture. And honestly, this is like the best homemade ketchup that you can make. That's how we use it here at home, as a condiment. And we made it a couple jars last week to try this recipe because I want to do a canning safe recipe here for you guys. I found one online and I'm linking to it in the description down below. We made a few test batches last week without canning, just to taste. Everybody loved it. We gifted to some friends. Everyone thought it was really good. So now we're making here together. I'm doubling this recipe. And the first thing we're going to do here is dice our shallots really small. Mince some garlic, grate the ginger. And we're also going to seed a couple jalapenos and cut them very small here. I like to measure all of my spices and ingredients before I start cooking. Now for the tomatoes, I'm cutting them a little bit on the larger sides because I want this to feel a bit more rustic, a bit more homemade. And the next step would be to saute the shallots. First, this helps developing a lot of flavor in the shallots and the garlic and ginger, which we're going to add next. We'll saute this for a bit, then add the diced peppers. And again, all the measurements and ingredients for this recipe will be in the description box down below. Next, we're going to add the spices, which here I have some cumin, some cinnamon, some ground cloves, some chili flakes to give lots of delicious flavor to this recipe. And we add it in this stage so the spices can bloom in the oil. That helps enhance their flavors even more. And I'm adding the diced tomatoes, giving them a little stir. And I'll add the sugar, stir it a little bit more, and then after this dissolves, I'll finish with adding the lemon juice and apple cider vinegar. Just realized here I didn't get that on camera, but I did add it in there. And I also added the salt. And now after everything is mixed in, we're just going to let this reduce for about 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how watery our tomatoes are. And then we're going to can them. When they get to a consistency like this, I'm using half-pint jars here, because the pot that I'm using to can today is the same as I use for the tomato sauce, and it's not as big, so this is the one that fits in there. But I like to can these in the smaller portions. They are especially good for gifts. After filling the jars, I'm just wiping the rims again, placing the lids and the bands to finger tight, and we're going to process this for about 10 minutes. If you're not comfortable with water bath canning, you could let the jam cool down first and add it to the refrigerator if you are planning to eat it within a few days. My water is not into a rolling boil here, as you can see, so I'm going to wait until that comes up to a boil before I start counting the 10 minutes to process it. And then when I'm done processing, I will let it rest for 5 minutes before I remove the jars from the pot. Now we're going to make one of my favorite recipes from my home country of Brazil. This dish is called Moqueca, which is usually a fish stew that is eaten in many different regions of Brazil and is made a little bit different depending where it's from too. I'm from the Northeast, and over there we use palm oil, like a dende oil, which is a artisanally processed palm oil. But I'm not using that today to make it easy, so it's going to be more like the other versions in the other states. It's a very simple, delicious stew that uses some of our garden veggies, some coconut milk, some seafood, lime juice, topped with cilantro. So good. We're going to start by dicing a whole white onion, mincing a couple cloves of garlic, and dicing one whole bell pepper. In Brazil, we usually use a mixture of green and red, but today I'm using only red because I'm adding some peppers from the garden. It is traditionally also not made spicy, but I like spicy, so I'm keeping the seeds inside my chilies. This is a Brazilian pepper called dedo de moça or ladyfingers. It's mild, not very spicy, but I'm also going to add a jalapeno and another chili that I've been using a lot this season and on this video, which is the pimenta de cheiro, the fragrant pepper. That one is not for heat, but for lots of flavor. For the tomatoes, I'm using this really big, beautiful Cherokee Purple here. I'm going to slice them instead of dicing, since tomatoes are the highlight of this video. This tomato is really big, so I'm using this whole Cherokee Purple, and I'm also going to use that red one. It could be about 3 to 4 tomatoes, depending on the size of the ones you have. Then we're going to add some olive oil to a preheated pan. Add the onions and saute them until they are translucent. Then we can add our garlic and our red bell pepper and cook it for a little bit more. I'm going to add a little bit of turmeric and ginger powder to this too. It's not traditional, but I like to add to mine to help with the nice yellow color and also give a bit extra flavor. Now it's time to start layering our tomatoes in this pan. And I'm going to make a nice layer here to hold our shrimp. I'm using shrimp as my protein today, but any seafood here would be great. You can use fish, you can use clams. I grew up eating this with mussels too, and I really liked it. After the tomatoes are in, we're going to pour in the coconut milk. You could let this cook a little more before adding the shrimp or the seafood, which is going to be basically poached on this stew. But I don't want my tomatoes to disintegrate, so I'm going to add the shrimp to this right after I add the coconut milk. Shrimp cooks very quickly too, so this won't be here for long. After the shrimp, I'm just adding the little diced peppers from the garden on the top, so it can make this stew look nice when it comes out too. I'm seasoning it with a little bit of salt and freshly cracked pepper. I'm going to cover this with a lid, and we're going to let it cook for 5 minutes. You don't want to overcook the shrimp, so as soon as the shrimp is cooked, it's ready. In Brazil, when you have this in a restaurant, it's taken to you in a clay pot just like this. It's still bubbling. And here we're just going to finish it with a nice squeeze of lime juice and a nice handful of cilantro. You could also add a handful of green onions here and serve it with rice. I like to add even more cilantro to the plate and a nice wedge of lime. And here we have it. One of my favorite dishes that I had growing up. Even as a kid, I really enjoyed eating this, and I hope you enjoy it at home too. Right now, we're going to make a tomato tart. So I'm gonna go ahead and slice these tomatoes, and I'm going to use store-bought puff pastry for this. I will start by slicing these big ones first. You don't want it too thin. You kind of want it to make them a highlight. This one is one of my favorites too. It's called Ananas Noir. I really like this variety. Even though it looks green inside, it's so tasty and so nice and sweet. This one I'm going to slice this way so it looks more like hearts. So beautiful inside. And even though this one also has a beautiful purple shoulder, I was thinking to do it like this, more like a classic tomato cut. It'd be nice to have some different sizes and textures. Now we're going to add these beautiful tomatoes to a bowl, and we're going to salt them. But that really helps drowning out the moisture of the tomatoes and making it taste a lot nicer. I'm using kosher salt here. And we put it in a bowl because we wanted to coat the salt on both sides of the tomatoes. This is especially important for this recipe so we don't get a soggy bottom on our tart. I'm using a sheet tray here with a rack, but you can also use a paper towel if you don't have one. And I'm going to line them here and let them drain a little bit. And maybe we'll pat with a paper towel if you need it. While we're waiting for the salt to work a little bit and drain out the moisture, I'm going to start working on our puff pastry. Okay, I have a sheet of defrosted store-bought puff pastry, and we're gonna work it, make it a little bigger. You can do it anywhere in between 9 to 11 inches, 12 inches. Just get it kind of a little bit bigger, more space for our tomatoes. And we're going to transfer it to another sheet pan lined with parchment paper, and we're going to use a fork to poke some holes in the middle of the pastry where we're going to line it with tomatoes. And then I'm also leaving a little edge here to form a nice crust on the sides. These tomatoes are extra juicy, so I will pat them with a paper towel to remove some of the moisture. I'm going to first sprinkle a layer of crumbled feta before I start layering these tomatoes. I'm gonna add a little bit on top too, but mostly under. And we're going to start layering our tomatoes. I like to start with the bigger slices first and alternate them within the different colors. And then at the end, I'll use the little ones to fill up the gaps and the patches, remembering to still leave a little space on the edges so the border of this tart can raise. Then we're going to finish up by sprinkling a little bit more feta, fresh oregano from the garden, and a few Kalamata olives. This is optional, but I do love the extra saltiness that this gives. It makes it a bit more interesting. Okay, before I do the olive oil, look at this. I noticed it was facing me, but this is how our tart looks like. I don't want to keep it out too long because I want this puff pastry to raise, so I'm just going to go ahead and add some olive oil, some black pepper. Then we're going to brush the edges with a egg wash, and we're going to put it in the oven for about 30 to 35 minutes. The oven is preheated to 400 degrees. All right, let's see how it looks. Oh my God. Look at this. How pretty. The oregano did burn a little bit, but that's okay. We can just put some more fresh ones to make it look nice. But it's so nice. It puffed up nicely. So it is really hot, but I'm going to carefully try to put this in a rack. Move with the paper. Then I can remove the paper. Actually, I'm going to put this in here so I don't make a mess. There we go. And now remove this paper so there's some airflow in the bottom and our tart stays nice and crusty. Look how beautiful. Oh my goodness. It's very hot right now, so I'm going to let it sit for like 10 to 15 minutes to kind of settle. And then we can garnish with some fresh basil, some more oregano, olive oil, and some other things. Looks really pretty. I really like it. It is definitely a great idea for entertaining, if you want to impress your guests with your tomato harvest and do something a bit more elevated or interesting than a tomato salad. And it's so easy if you use the store-bought puff pastry, as I did, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, guys. We're already busy as gardeners, doing so many things at this time of the year. A little convenience, it's okay if you want to just have something quick and kind of impressive to make. So really looking forward to enjoy this. For our next recipe, we're going to make Chana Masala, which is an Indian chickpea stew. This one I'm going to use about this much, so it would be maybe 3 large tomatoes or 4 to kind of make the base, the sauce for this very delicious spiced stew. So I have my chickpeas cooked in here, but you can use canned too. The recipe that I'm going to link down below that gives you an option for both. We're going to start by measuring our spices. I have some cumin here that I grinded in the morning pesto, and some bay leaves, some peppers and cinnamon. And I'm going to measure the ground spices together. So I just added some turmeric, some garam masala, coriander, the cumin that I had previously ground, and chili powder. I don't have all of the spices that this recipe calls for, but I find that this combination already makes it very delicious. And to a pan, I'm going to add some ghee, a couple diced onions, and I have heard from an Indian chef once that the secret with Indian cooking is with the browning of the onions. So if you are watching from India, I would love to know if that's true. I'm going to let these onions cook down and brown for about 8 to 10 minutes. Then I'm going to add the garlic and the ginger. I did not use a paste this time. I just finely minced the garlic and grated some ginger too. We're going to let them cook a few more minutes until fragrant. Then I'm going to add the spices to bloom in the oil. At this stage, you just want to cook it for another couple more minutes because you do not want these spices to burn, but they smell wonderful right now, just being sauteed on the pan. Then we're going to add our garden tomatoes. I cut them big in here because I like to blend my sauce at the end after everything has cooked down a bit. After everything is nicely mixed together, I'm adding the green chili, the bay leaf, the cinnamon stick, and the cloves. We are going to cook this until these tomatoes break down even more and start to get a little pulpy. It's cooked down pretty good, but we like our curries smooth here in our house. I'm just going to remove the bay leaf and the cinnamon stick if I can find it. And then I'm going to blend this to make it thicker and smooth, but this is an optional step. So I'm just going to blend this real quick and we're going to pour it right back on that pan. That's good enough. I'm gonna scrape everything out of this blender. We don't want to lose this delicious sauce. If you wanted to make even thicker than this, you could add a couple of the cooked chickpeas to this too. It reduced really well because I'm using this wider pan and it's evaporating a little more. So that is good enough for us and it looks great. So after doing this, I'm going to turn the heat back on and add my chickpeas in. It smells so good already. I added a bit of the chickpea cooking liquid to this because it looked a bit too thick for me. And now I'm going to let this simmer for about 15 minutes. And then we're going to add the salt after it has cooked down a bit. Okay, our curry is ready and it's looking really good. And you're gonna eat it to eat some rice again. We're gonna taste this right now. It smells delicious. I'm just so excited to see how this tastes using the tomatoes from the garden. I cooked the rice in my little rice cooker while we were cooking the curry too. I like the consistency, it's very nice and thick. And this keeps very well in the fridge too. It gives you another meal, leftover lunch or meal prep. And then we're going to add some cilantro. I like to leave the leaves kind of big. It makes it nice and pretty. Look at that. All right, taste test. So I make this all the time in the winter. This is the first time we're making this summer. And when we lived in Astoria, we used to order takeout all the time, Indian food in New York City. Now it's a bit harder where we are, a bit more remote. So it's great that we can make this at home. So, you ready?
Yes. Let's do it.
I have just the curry first. Oh my God.
Amazing.
It's delicious. I did taste it when I was seasoning, but it is so good with the rice and the cilantro. Oops. What do you think of the consistency?
I think it's perfect. That's how I like it.
Very good. For our last recipe, the 10th recipe of today, we are going to make tomato powder using the skins from the tomatoes that we passed through the food mill to make tomato sauce for canning. I added them to the dehydrator together with my cherry tomatoes into this little plastic tray here so they didn't fall behind. And after 24 hours, this is how they look. You might have seen that I have a few extra cherry tomatoes in here too because they took a little longer to dehydrate, the bigger ones. And the cherry tomatoes are here. I'll put it away in this jar. These ones took about 12 hours to get fully dehydrated. I'll open it so you can see how it looks inside. Oops, I don't want to flip them. And the way I use this in the winter, I just add them to soups and stews and pastas even. When I just want a little bit of a more concentrated tomato flavor. It's really good. Some people snack on this, but I don't have that many. So I'm going to try my best to save this for the winter. And then for the tomato powder that we're gonna make right now, I'm going to use just a blender and add the tomato skins to it. Those are very dried. Okay, they're all in, and I'm going to also add, this is optional, a little bit of dried oregano. One of you guys asked on my last video how I dry my herbs, and I simply just bundle them and hang them up and wait until they're dry. They stay in my kitchen, living room until they kind of look like this. And now that's fully dried, I'm going to take a little bit of the leaves. They come off very easily too after they're dried, and I'm going to throw this in here to make our tomato powder even more delicious. Close it up and blend. Here we go. Tomato powder. Great seasoning for the winter too. So we're just going to add this to our little jar. And once I keep working on canning projects and when I have more tomato skins, I'll keep adding to this jar. Oh, it smells really good. And keep it filling out for the summer. I use this a bit different than I do the dehydrated tomatoes. I use it more as a flavor enhancer. This one, the dehydrated, you still see pieces of tomatoes in the whatever you're cooking with, soup, stew, pasta. With this, I just add a little tomato powder for an extra really good umami flavor. So I love making this. A friend of mine in Brazil also makes tomato salt. So she would get this, fill the other half with salt, shake it off, and then use this also as a seasoning. If you watched all the way to the end and saw all the 10 recipes, please let me know in the comment section down below which one you liked the most and which one you are going to try making it at home first with your own homegrown tomatoes. If you like this video, I'd love for you to subscribe and follow along in our cooking and gardening journey. I just picked some more tomatoes this morning, and with these different colored ones, I'm going to make a roasted tomato sauce that I'm going to use for cooking through the week, and you can watch me making that in this video right here. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you next time.